The fact that we are one of the biggest beef producers in Australia and that we have such a significant land asset and a resource base behind us, we see that that gives us a responsibility to support others in the industry. We see the sustainability of the whole industry is really vital to the sustainability of our own business, and that we all have a role in making that happen, and ours is a significant role as a significant member of that industry. My name's Naomi Wilson. I work for AACo, Australian Agricultural Company. I'm the Head of Environment and Sustainability. Today we're at Brunette Downs on the Barkly in the Northern Territory. Under our sustainability framework, we've made a commitment to take real action on climate and our impact on climate. There are 4 main areas that we're focusing on. We're tackling our methane emissions head on. We're looking at opportunities for carbon sequestration in the landscape. We're tackling the transition from fossil fuels to renewable energies and really building on our efficiency as a business to build that greenhouse gas efficiency. We saw 2 main barriers for us in delivering on those 4 components, and the first was in the gap between the emerging technologies around methane abatement, so products like asparagopsis, and their practical application in a commercial context. We partnered with MLA and Sea Forest and UNE to fast track that commercialisation process in a long-fed Wagyu herd, and so that's giving us a good basis that we can apply that product through our feedlot and have a really solid understanding of how it functions in our operational environment. The other commitment that we made was to develop a tool that enables us to estimate carbon in the landscape, both in soil and vegetation, using satellite tools and algorithms around those, and to better understand the management practices that we need to be implementing to drive that carbon sequestration across the landscape. We've partnered with a really strong group of partners in that, with SIBO Labs again, but also Mullion Group, who bring a really good understanding of carbon modelling, and then Carbon Link, who are one of the leading soil carbon experts in Australia. Working with those 3 tech partners alongside Food Agility and a number of universities to help us build out that tool and understand how carbon functions in our landscape. This process will enable us to build programs moving forward and invest more confidently in the infrastructure and practice changes that we'll require as a business to build that carbon asset. A sustainable stocking model is really fundamental to managing a business, particularly where you're retaining a core genetic asset in your herd. You need to protect that herd year in, year out. We've looked at our sustainable stocking model from the perspective of we have significant seasonal variability. How can we have our cattle interacting with that landscape in a way that there's resilience and buffer in that system to get us through the peaks and troughs in those seasons? Taking a scientific approach, a data-based approach to assessing the capacity of the landscape and understanding what that long-term carrying capacity is, and then building our stocking models and our breeding programs and all of those programs around that sustainable stocking model out into the future. Sustainable stocking strategy goes hand in hand with the work that we've been doing around our annual forage budgeting process, building technologies that help us to measure the available pasture in the landscape and using that to then match that feed supply with the feed demand, and using that to plan out our stock movements. We started working with SIBO Labs in 2018. We collected a lot of data across our landscape to inform that satellite tool. It's one source of data that helps us bring some precision and confidence in the data that we're using for making decisions. We're starting to look at how we can really leverage that data beyond forage budgeting, using it to understand our performance in managing our landscape effectively. So we set targets for residuals and pasture utilisation, so that's a tool for us to measure how effectively we're hitting those targets. We can use it to measure the response rate of pasture to rain, so how effective our pasture is, our production system is, how resilient that system is, and then make management decisions where we need to address issues that we see arising. It will also help us to start to execute on some of our aspirations around natural capital, so being able to demonstrate performance for good land management, and also being able to identify where there are opportunities in the landscape to build natural capital value that we can then generate new income and revenue streams as a business. One of the challenges that we've got around natural capital, particularly working in such a large landscape, is the ability to measure it reliably. We're working with Accounting for Nature, who have developed a robust framework of methods to take those methods and build them out further, fill gaps in those methods for working in vast and remote landscapes in Northern Australia. So how do we measure condition environmentally and from a production perspective in those natural capital assets across a large scale? Framework like Accounting for Nature gives us a baseline, and from that baseline we can look at what management practices we need to change or improve or build on. It's not prescriptive around the management practices that you're required to adopt. We're looking at practices incorporating and building on spelling programs, so that rest and recovery cycle within pastures. We're exploring how you apply rotational grazing strategies in such a vast landscape with lower infrastructure levels. Exploring alternative ways of moving cattle through the landscape so that the way that they're interacting with the pasture is delivering positive outcomes. And then to other practices like building ponding banks to restore landscapes and exploring what those different practices have in terms of benefits for those natural capital outcomes.